without further ado, it is now time to start off today's show every way we start off the Tuesday edition of the Zach Kroll Sports Podcast with my 10 takeaways of the week. So, boys, without further ado, hit the music. Let's get to it. Takeaway number one, it was hard really not to be impressed with Lamar Jackson and the competitive spirit of the Baltimore Ravens. And I totally understand. There are going to be plenty of Kansas City Chiefs fans that look at this game on Sunday Night Football and are pretty concerned. The Chiefs had many different ways to just completely put this game away, and unfortunately, they were not able to get the job done. That is going to be one of the more frustrating losses in the Mahomes and Andy Reid era. However, I do think if you are the Kansas City Chiefs, it's one game. A lot of things had to happen for the Chiefs to lose that did, and the odds of that happening again are pretty slim. The bottom line is, if the Chiefs have one concern, it's their run defense. They need to get that fixed. It needs to get better quickly if they're going to want to win games. But it's just hard not to be really impressed with Lamar Jackson. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. The Ravens don't really have a choice right now but to pay him. He's that good. He's that special. And he really just put the team on his back and was able to win the Baltimore Ravens the game on Sunday Night Football. The defense came up with plenty of big-time plays, including forcing the turnover on Edwards-Helaire, including forcing Mahomes into his first career interception in the month of September, which is just one of the more crazy stats I've ever seen in my years of watching football. Shout out to the Ravens. We're going to get into this later in the show. Takeaway number two. It was really good to see King Henry back where he belongs, just putting the Tennessee Titans on his back. There is not many players in the NFL better than this guy. And when it comes to Derrick Henry and the last couple years, I feel like it is time to start talking about just how historic this run has been. Literally since the middle of the 2019 season, not only has this guy been the clear best running back in the NFL, but he's playing at a Hall of Fame level. Like, this guy is unreal. 183 yards and 3 touchdowns on Sunday in a game in Seattle, a place where the road team really never wins, in front of fans. The first game in front of fans, in front of the 12th man since COVID. And Derrick Henry was just able to put the team on his back and get the job done. And here's the scary thing. You realize this guy caught 5 passes for over 50 yards total? If he could get his game going as a receiver, which is the one thing, if you were going to critique Derrick Henry's game that he hasn't done, oh man, this guy is just that good. The Titans defense is still a major concern. The Titans offensive coordinator is still a main concern. He came in from the Raiders, and I remember when he was the coordinator for the Raiders, it really wasn't good. Todd Downing, the name of the Titans offensive coordinator. When he was in charge in Vegas, it wasn't good. But Derrick Henry, I feel like, is just that good of a player where he could just literally make any coordinator good. That's how special he is. What a win for the Tennessee Titans in a game they needed to have when the Colts lost to go to 0-2. Jaguars lose to go to 0-2. The Titans are 1-1. The Texans are 1-1. Both of those teams now are tied in top of the AFC South. Takeaway number 3. It was hard to watch not only the amount of quarterbacks that went down during Sunday's game, but really throughout the whole season. I feel like there have just been a crazy amount of injuries in general between Carson Wentz and Tua Tagovailoa and Tyrod Taylor. Baker Mayfield and Derek Carr even had scares. And look, I don't claim to be some kind of medical expert when it comes to football and the possible effect that playing or not playing could have when it comes to the preseason, but I just feel like there have been a crazy amount of injuries so far during the NFL season, and it's concerning. We watch football to see the best players, and just seeing all these injuries happen, it sucks. Like, Derek Carr has been really one of the best players in the NFL to start the season. And the Raiders get off to their best start, and it feels like a while. And I know they've started off 2-0 before, and they've really struggled to end the last couple regular seasons. But the amount of injuries was just terrible, and I just hope these guys could get healthy. Tua Tagovailoa is a young quarterback that I think once he went down, the Dolphins just really lost faith and were never really had a chance to win because they couldn't hold on to the ball. They just played so sloppy, and their offensive line was a disaster. I mean, did you guys see the play Tua got hurt on? It was a 4th down, and the Bills' pass rusher came in unblocked and got a big hit on the young Dolphins quarterback, Tagovailoa. It just sucks to see all these quarterbacks going down. It also sucks that Tyrod Taylor got hurt. It is looking like Davis Mills is going to be under center for the Houston Texans going forward. They will play on Thursday Night Football this week against the Panthers. Sucks to see all these quarterbacks go down. Takeaway number 4. I guess that's a good job by the Dallas Cowboys going into LA, playing in front of a bunch of Cowboy fans and getting the win over the Chargers on the Greg Zuerlein 56-yard field goal for the win. And the Cowboys deserve credit no matter who it's against, how you get the job done. Winning a road game in the NFL is never something that should be taken for granted. And considering the fact the Cowboys were one of the few teams in the NFL to start their season with 2 road games, getting past that 1-1 is something you would always sign up for, and they deserve credit once again. But I don't trust Mike McCarthy as a head coach. I just don't. And I feel like the main reason why the Los Angeles Chargers lost this game was because of their own doing. It was the amount of penalties, and I get the refs didn't help. But Justin Herbert played fine. I think for the people who are saying he's already starting to regress, just really aren't watching the games close enough, because if you watched Week 1 against the Washington football team, like, Justin Herbert was really the only reason why the Chargers won that game. And based on his clutch 3rd down throws, I think the Chargers will be fine as long as they clean the penalties up. That was just such a bad way to lose a game. But at the same time, it's just typical Los Angeles Chargers, if I'm being honest with you. There are very few teams in the NFL that have lost that amount of games in that frustrating of a fashion like the Chargers, and I totally understand why their fans would be frustrated after a loss like that, but keep the faith. I get the AFC West is tough. You gave the game away. If you just limit the penalties, I'm sure you'll be fine. But Dallas, Mike McCarthy, almost giving the game away on that field goal. I mean, look, Mike McCarthy, I've said it once, I've said it again, the biggest con man in the NFL. Takeaway number 5. Taylor Heinicke should have been named the Washington football team's starting quarterback from the beginning of the season. And I respect Ryan Fitzpatrick and everything that he has been able to do throughout his career. He's the definition of a good journeyman, top-notch backup quarterback. But for a team like Washington, who has a really good defense, and I think has a good head coach, and really has good skill position players around the quarterback position, they should have known that at no point in Ryan Fitzpatrick's career has he been a guy that has been able to start all 17 games throughout an NFL season. And it only took 1 game for him to go down. But look, we saw what this kid Taylor Heinicke was able to do during that playoff game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was super impressive. Of all of the quarterbacks that the defending Super Bowl champions played during that stretch, right? Between the Aaron Rodgers of the world and Patrick Mahomes and Taylor Heinicke, it was Heinicke that gave the defending Super Bowl champion Buccaneers, Drew Brees in that conversation as well, the biggest challenge of anyone. And they deserve a lot of credit for that. Shout out to the Washington football team and, my God, the New York Giants. I mean, how many opportunities did the New York Giants have to win this football game? Their play calling was way too conservative, and it sucks if you're a Giant fan, because the main concern for me going into this game was the offense, between the offensive line not being able to block the Washington football team's pass rush and Daniel Jones under center at quarterback. And both of those units played, I thought, as well as they could. This was one of Daniel Jones' better games played as a New York Giant. and still they were not able to get the job done. They choked the game away. Dexter Lawrence obviously lining up offsides. Brutal loss for the Giants. Takeaway number 6. We spoke a little bit about the Miami Dolphins-Buffalo Bills game when it came to the young quarterbacks. I wanted to get into that one also. Look, for the people that are saying the Dolphins should just bail on Tua Tagovailoa for Deshaun Watson, I just don't think, still at this point, even no matter how desperate you are when it comes to the quarterback position, the Texans are going to want multiple first-round picks for this guy, and given all of his off-the-field questions and the risks that come with that, I just don't see how exactly a team could trade for him at this point until all of the off-the-field questions are taken care of. And if I'm Miami, look, they could have drafted Trey Lance if they didn't trade the number 3 overall pick to San Francisco. They could have drafted Justin Fields or Mac Jones, but they decided to go with Tua Tagovailoa and keep him. And they had to realize by making that decision, they're going all in with Tua. And unfortunately, his season hasn't gotten off to the best start. Right now, Brian Flores said he is considered day-to-day. The Dolphins have a big game coming up on the road against the Las Vegas Raiders. That's a game that you would preferably want to win. It could be tough, but Miami just didn't show up in that game once Tua got hurt. Really, even before he got hurt. The Dolphins' offensive line was an absolute disgrace. It played terrible, and they need to play better. I was very surprised. As good of a coach as Brian Flores is, right? And as great of a job as he has done since he's gotten to Miami, he hasn't been able to beat the Buffalo Bills. And the frustrating part is, I don't think Buffalo played great. Like, watch Josh Allen the first 2 games of the season. He's playing much closer to 2018 and 2019 Josh Allen, who, quite frankly, wasn't very good, opposed to 2020 Josh Allen, who was obviously an MVP candidate. He needs to play better if Buffalo wants to win. Takeaway number 7. It was a tough day for the rookie quarterbacks, mostly Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence. And look, Trevor Lawrence has never lost a regular season game in his life, it feels like, before he got to Jacksonville. And he's now lost 2 games in a row, and it sucks. He barely threw for over 120 yards yesterday. He didn't. He threw for 118 yards. And the bottom line is this. He's an elite prospect. But he can't do it all by himself. There's a reason why the Jacksonville Jaguars are on a streak of losing 17 football games in a row. That is just unheard of. And his head coach, to be honest, based on his body language, again for the 2nd straight week in a row, that dude, Urban Meyer, just looked miserable on the sideline. If that continues, the Jaguars aren't winning many games, and I worry for Trevor Lawrence. I really do. I don't know if he's in a great position to succeed. Now, when it comes to Zach Wilson, I just think he needs to play a little bit smarter. Jets head coach Robert Saleh hinted at it after the game. Sometimes boring football is the best football to be played, and I just feel like this was a tough spot for the Jets, man. Going up against a Bill Belichick coach defense, and if you follow the NFL, you will know that historically, Bill Belichick has owned rookie quarterbacks throughout his career. It was a tough spot. With that being said, the throws and the decision-making has to be better for Zach Wilson. The Jets' defense wasn't terrible. I think the frustrating part about this game is, if you're a Jet fan, is that I don't think you played particularly bad outside the quarterback. It's just so hard to win games when your quarterback is out here throwing 4 interceptions. That obviously isn't putting your team in the best position as possible to win. I feel for Zach Wilson. I feel for the Jets. I feel for the rookie quarterbacks. It's a tough start. A guy who has gotten off to the opposite of a tough start is Kyler Murray. And I don't know how the Arizona Cardinals found a way to win that game. I guess the best explanation I have for you guys is Minnesota Viking gonna Minnesota Viking. I mean, have they had a kicker ever? I feel like every time the Vikings are in a position to win a game via the field goal, it doesn't get done, especially in the biggest spots. When you look at Morton Anderson and Blair Walsh, and this continued with Greg Joseph, because even though the Minnesota Vikings defense is an absolute disaster, and that's bad because Mike Zimmer is a defensive guy. He came over more than a couple years ago. He's been a good coach for the Vikings for about 7 years now. He was obviously the defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals, And the Vikings built their team well. Like, I don't think the general manager, Rick Spielman, is at fault, even though if the Vikings miss the playoffs, he'll end up getting the boot. And you just can't lose games like this, man. They're so deflating. Kirk Cousins actually played really well. He put the Vikings in a position to win, but unfortunately, the kicker just couldn't get it done, missing a 37-yard field goal at the buzzer. And even though they play in a weak NFC North, I think the Vikings are in trouble. I think Mike Zimmer could be gone by season's end. And it's unfortunate because he hasn't done a terrible job, but the last 2 years, the Vikings have been some of the more disappointing teams in the NFL. And once again, it's 2 games. Like, this season can turn around. But the Vikings now have a home game against the Seattle Seahawks. That is going to be tough, especially against Seattle, a team that is coming off a tough loss in their own right. But Minnesota's offense should be good. Between Kirk Cousins, who I get it isn't the best quarterback, but look at the weapons around him. Dalvin Cook, Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. They have names on the defense. Daniil Hunter is back, Harrison Smith. And still, the Vikings can't win football games. I would be frustrated if I was a Viking fan. Kyler Murray's a magician, phenomenal. But Arizona really did not deserve to win that game considering how it ended. Takeaway number 9. I think Derek Carr is playing the best football of his career. And it's crazy because last year and really the year before that, the thing with the Raiders have been, they've obviously gotten off to some good starts, but they just haven't been able to finish the job off and get it done. And I never thought Derek Carr was the problem with this team. Their defense sucked. It was embarrassingly bad. Their drafting has not been good between Cleveland Ferrell and Damon Arnett and Alex Leatherwood, who I get it. He's only played in 2 games, but the key point with all 3 of those draft picks, right, is that Gruden reached for them, and if he really wanted them, the Raiders should have just traded back and added extra value, but John Gruden isn't about that. However, this offense is really good, and it's came to play. I personally, up until last week, was not the biggest Henry Ruggs fan. I think he had Darius Hayward-Bay written all over him. But he played well on Sunday, made a couple really big catches, including the bomb from Carr. Brian Edwards looks like a player. And if I'm a Raider fan, considering Darren Waller was shut down for the majority of this game, Josh Jacobs wasn't even playing, your offensive line obviously lost so many guys from last year's squad. No more Rodney Hudson, no more Gabe Jackson. Obviously, Richie Incognito's hurt. And still, the Raiders are finding a way to win games. John Gruden, he's totally in over his head, I get it. But he has a smart offensive mind. He has this offense humming. It seems like a lot of Raider fans, unlike the Chargers, have shifted to Las Vegas and are loyal and are showing up to that stadium rooting for their team. I think the atmosphere for Sunday's game against the Miami Dolphins should be electric. And the Raiders are definitely one of the top storylines in the NFL. Ben Roethlisberger looked horrible. I'm concerned about him. I'm concerned about the Steelers' offensive line. That is definitely another storyline to monitor going forward. And finally, to end the 10 takeaways of the week segment, Carson Wentz and the Indianapolis Colts, man. It's tough because I remember early on in this game against the Los Angeles Rams, Carson Wentz threw that shovel pass interception, which, quite frankly, could have been one of the worst plays I've ever seen by a quarterback. And after that shovel pass, shortly after, he made some plays. He didn't play terrible, but he gets hurt. He has sprains in both ankles, and he wasn't able to come out for the last drive of the game. Jacob Eason throws an interception, and that was all she wrote. The Colts are historically a team that has gotten off to some slow starts, but at the same time, that loss is just more frustrating than ever. If I'm a Colts fan, it's tough, man. The AFC South is a wide open division, even though the Titans were able to pull out a win against the Seahawks. But now, in a big-time Week 3 game, on the road in Tennessee, in a divisional matchup that you have to win to avoid an 0-3 start, you're really going with Jacob Eason as your starting quarterback? That's tough. Carson Wentz, if I'm the Colts, I don't regret trading for him just because I don't necessarily know what other choice they had. I mean, look, the Colts made the playoffs last year with Phillip Rivers at quarterback, who is currently coaching high school football. I don't necessarily think that great quarterback play was the reason why the Colts were good last year. And I feel like if I'm a Colts fan, that's why I'm more frustrated right now than ever before, just because you don't necessarily need great quarterback play to win, but at the same time, the Colts offensive line It's been super banged up. We know what happened to Quentin Nelson. Braden Smith didn't play in this game. Eric Fisher, it was his first game back. And the Colts just need to get healthy quickly, or else they could be in trouble once again. Every time this conversation comes up, I just think, what if Andrew Luck would have never retired? Those are my 10 takeaways of the week. Love doing this segment to start off each and every episode of the Zach Kroll Sports Podcast.